Welcome to the Sacred and the Profane podcast. I'm your host, Shannon McNally. We will be speaking with elders, musical luminaries, medicine people, and session players about everyday magic and the past, present, and future of heartfelt and soulful real music.
Hey, Connie, how are you?
Hi, Shannon. How are you? I'm so happy. I'm so honored that you've asked me to do this too. Of course, I loved Waylon. I'm happy to talk about him and happy to keep his memory alive, whatever, and his music. So proud of you and what you're doing.
Oh, man, thank you very much. Well, how did you meet Waylon? Or when did you meet him? How did you meet him?
Well, gosh, I'm trying to think what year. It's just in the 70s, early 70s, but I went and I was already seeing Willie. So I went to this club in Fort Worth to see Willie play. And I was sitting at a table by myself, just watching him on stage. And here comes Waylon. I mean, hard to miss, I was just sitting there by myself and he just walked right up to my table and he said, "Hey, anyone sitting here? Do you mind if I sit down?" I went, "No, absolutely." And of course I knew who he was. And he started if you knew Waylon, he started that same old charming, he said, "So what's a nice girl like you doing in a place like this?"
Doing in a dump like this.
Yeah, and I said, "I'm with him." And I pointed to the stage and he went, "Oh, God, of course you are. I should have known that, But then we sat there and by the time Willie came off the stage, and Waylon was so easy to get to know. He was seriously, what you saw is what you got. There was no agendas with him, no hidden, flirty, of course, always. And Jesse'd be the first one to tell you that. He loved women. He just he loved people, but he loved women.
That's sort of why I wanted to do this because, I've been a fan of him my whole life. I grew up on all that music.
Right.
And as I've started to do this project, all of the women that I ended up wanting to talk to, when I looked at that list, it is an impressive list of just pretty badass, smart, gorgeous. Everybody's amazing. And so I found that pretty interesting. But, I always think of Waylon as sort of being outside of the cultural norm because they were kind of mischievous and instigators in some ways.
Oh, absolutely.
That seems to be a theme with Waylon, all these kind of great, smart ladies that are around him.
Well, I thought about it, and when we've talked about it for Jesse, and I've talked about it, a million times, but you know how you always hear that women love the bad boys. That you just do. Of course, you want a good guy in your life, but there's that attraction. The bad boys just get your attention and
keep it.
You love them. Yeah, totally. Well, that's who Waylon was, a bad boy, in that sense. In that, I almost said in that outlaw sense, which is, of course, a cliche, of course, but he just had that way of doing things his own way. And it was kind of like with his music too, it was kind of his way or the highway. That's just how, and that's not how he was as a person, but that's how he was with his music. But women are drawn to that. And he was a charmer. He was just such a fine looking man, of course. And then he is with the guitar, and he's, and his songs he sings, and everything about him. He just drew women towards him. He drew people towards him, but women just, I don't think I ever met a woman that said, I just didn't, there nothing.
Yeah. I was going to ask you that, like, did you ever meet anybody else like Waylon? Or can you think of anybody else that was like him?
Of course, he and Christopherson and Willie and John Prine, these guys would, of course, they'd all be, and Hank Jr., they'd all be really good friends because there was a lot of similarities in each of them. Mm-hmm. But they always, every one of them, and Waylon included, had a real healthy respect for other musicians. He would help anybody. If anybody needed something, you know, even though he had that bad boy image, he had that, there was such a sincerity, and he was a bad boy with a good heart, with a
Uh-huh.
great heart, you know.
Well, that's a winning combination.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
great, you know. But I know Waylon had a pretty big following in the Native American community. Like he was kind of a super duper rock star,
Oh, sure.
particularly in the Southwest, but all over the country. And
Yeah.
uh, you know, what do you think was the connection?
I remember Jesse telling me quite a while ago that back before Waylon, when he first was getting started, and when her and Waylon were getting together, that there was just a period before Waylon broke into the big mainstream that
Yeah,
he just, I mean, he'd play these small clubs, and but he didn't have a, he just didn't get a huge following to start out with, as none of them do. I mean, it has to
right.
build, but he would in New Mexico, uh, he would play some of the reservations, and he got a really big following. They would book him at the reservations before anybody would book him in these other clubs.
Uh-huh.
They connected so strong with that, and that was kind of like their anthem for the Navajo Nation for a long time. That was kind of their
Mhm.
anthem. So they loved Waylon, and of course Waylon loved them, and he had a crowd with them. Not only a crowd, but a crowd of really appreciative people.
Yeah. Of course, Waylon was from West Texas. He was from Lubbock, you know, and he would have grown up in total cowboy culture.
Oh, sure.
You know, but do you have any, you know, would you have a favorite story about Waylon or some adventure? Because you guys got to be really good friends for a long
We got
time.
to be such good friends, Waylon and Jesse and Willie and I, just, but that same night that I met Waylon for that at that club in Fort Worth, afterwards, we went back to the hotel or the motel, and Willie and Waylon sat up playing poker. I just literally all night long. So after the poker game was over, Waylon came back to the room with Willie, and they were talking and winding it down. But Waylon said, he said, I've got this song I've been writing. He said, I got it just close, but I just can't quite finish it. I need you to help me with it. And Willie said, well, what is it? And it was Goodhearted Woman.
All right.
And so they're sitting there and and I said, wait a minute, wait a minute. You guys will never remember this in daylight,
Uh-huh.
They weren't drunk, but they were just buzzed enough that,
Right.
anyway, so I grabbed just a piece of motel stationery from the Fort Worth Hotel, and I started writing it down, and they finished the song right there, Goodhearted Woman. So that's, I kind of, and it was just, Waylon had started it, about Jesse, and then he and Willie just talking about me and Jesse and our lives, that's how the song came to be. So that's kind of one of my favorites.
That's an amazing story. It says a
Mhm.
lot about you too.
Oh, thanks. And in the Country Music Hall of Fame, I think in Wayland, well, I know it is in Wayland's area where his awards and his memorabilia stuff. There's that piece of paper, the Fort Worth Motel with
You
with
wrote
my
it down?
writing. Yeah, so it's in there.
Oh, that's wonderful. I think for a lot of gals, they take that song as a pretty big red flag. Like,
Oh,
what am
sure,
I getting myself into?
sure.
Did you think about that? Did you think about that? Because I mean, I don't, I think a lot of girls, most of us, we can pretty much, see trouble coming.
You know what you will put up with and what you won't to it. Yeah.
Right? Well, I guess that's you sign up and then you go, well, we'll see how this goes.
Right.
That seems to me like an overarching theme. When I hear the term outlaws,
Mhm.
I hear that kind of as a contradiction. When I think of that group of writers, Chris Christopherson and Willie and Billy Joe Shaver and Waylon and Merle, and I think about that whole group of people, I hear a lot of existentialism in it. I hear a lot of spirituality in it, a very deep, sort of far-reaching spirituality. A lot just straight up spirit work.
Sure.
It wasn't all just beer and roadhouses. I mean, beer and roadhouses are fun. They're great. I got no problem with beer and roadhouses. But there seems to be a higher tier of thinking, and that's communicated through all the music.
The outlaw term and what I always felt like, or what from my perspective, what I saw with these guys, and Waylon was a stickler for this, like for his music. I think it was more to do with the music that the outlaw, of course, the boys will be boys and their mischief, but I think the outlaw term really came from the way they were with their record companies and with their music. The main driving force that they wanted with their music was creative control. They didn't want somebody coming in saying, oh, no, we don't, that song doesn't fit the album. We don't like that. Why don't you put another love song in there or another rock? They just hated it. They wanted the creative control and pretty much insisted on it.
Yeah, well, and thank God thank God they were like that.
That's the thing, is if they could make money, I mean, maybe the money was better if they had sold their soul to an extent, to do exactly but they could make money because they were good. They could make money and have fun. And if they had to conform to what a record company, then it wasn't fun. It took the fun out of it for them, and it wasn't worth doing it. That's the way I always saw it. And I know that's how Waylon always thought.
What's so nice, I think so many people look at Waylon, they look at Willie and Chris and Billy Joe Shaver, they look at those guys, Johnny Cash, they look at them and know they did it their way. And it gives
Bob Dylan, I mean, you can go.
Bob Dylan, I mean, it gives you permission. It gives you permission to do that.
Yeah, and see, there's that same thing. When you look through that thread, Terry Allen, Joe Ely, these guys, that same thing. It's like they want their creative control. They've got in their mind what they want to do and what works for them and what makes their sound better and the message that's what makes them successful, When
I think of the women artists that were contemporary with these guys, I think of Loretta Lynn and Dolly Parton and Emmylou Harris and Linda Ronstadt, and they always looked fantastic.
Exactly.
They always looked great.
Yeah.
And so it's, but all of those women were held to the same mental aesthetic.
It's definitely different standards, that's for sure. I mean, as you're talking, I'm thinking the only one that really comes to mind that was Janis Joplin. She just, I don't have you want me on stage, whatever. And I've known other women that were good, that didn't quite make the A-list, but it's hard. Not a question, so much harder for a woman.
Because when I stood up to the microphone, I was the first day in the studio, I went, I have lost my mind. I have completely lost my mind. I cannot believe. What am I doing? Oh my God, no, I'm crazy. And I got into the first couple songs and I went, all right, this isn't as hard as I thought.
Yeah, because it felt good, sure.
But it was terrifying. And I have no idea how people will respond to it. But I wonder what Waylon would have thought of it. Would he have gone, never thought of that? Or, man, I was hoping women would sing these songs one day.
Without hesitation, he would have loved it. I'm serious. Like I said earlier about, number one, he would help anybody with anything, But it's not even about, like, he wouldn't have just wanted to help you do it. He would have said, wow, you're good. You should be doing it. he would have been so honored. I wish I could just take out that little piece of my brain and stick it so you would know exactly. He would be so honored
Oh man.
and so proud seriously that a woman would want to do it, not just a man. That would make him proud.
All right. Well, that makes me really happy because, you know, it felt bold. It felt
Right.
really bold when I first started, and I thought, well, if this is terrible, at least I don't have to play it for anybody. Like, I'll know if this is not working.
It came from your heart. That's the whole deal.
Having done this record, I feel different on the other side of this record than I did before it. I feel different. I feel same person, but I feel like, all right, well, what you got for me now? Like, I did that.
Yeah,
Nothing scares me now.
To me, that's Waylon's legacy being carried on, not just through his music, but the feeling of how you felt doing it, and that it was important to get it done. You know, I think that's amazing.
That's great. He's pure poetry.
The guys that are still around, when they hear it and they know it's Waylon's, that's the other thing, is they're going to be so proud. Willie and Kid, when they hear a woman singing it, and of course the way you sing too, they're gonna go, wow, she did him proud. You know,
that almost makes me cry. But
well, it's the truth, because their hearts are still in their music more than for the money. It always has been.
I just feel like if I could give 20-year-old girls or 30-year-old women who never heard Waylon, never heard his voice, never heard the sound of that voice, the way he even spoke, or that delivery, if I could give that sense of self, I think what it all comes back to is he had a very strong sense of self.
Yeah, and that's what you've done. You've picked up Waylon's, that same thing that he had. That's
all right.
Good for you.
Man, yes, that makes me very happy. Well, I think we did it.
I think so. Thank you so much for asking me. That makes me proud. Whatever else I can do, you know that.
Thank you
I'm
very
here to
much.
help you.
Thank you.